are a writing company and we teach people how to write books, which they diligently go and do after a course. Show of hands, please. There we go then. I'm going to ask you quite a few writing-related questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. Can everyone hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, be quiet. That's all we can do. All right. The first question, I would like to know a bit more about your writing routine. Do you have one? How do you work? What can you tell us?
Well, you know, there's very little point. If you had John Bamble or Martin Amos here, they would talk about art. They're very distrustful of the use of the word craft. Everything has to be art. But art comes out of craft. I think had you been fortunate enough to go to Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, it would probably be filled with circles that didn't quite meet, and helicopters that weren't going to fly. And craft comes out of hard work, and craft comes out of discipline. And I think that's true. Anybody here who works in a profession that requires a degree of skill will know that you practice it, that you work at it, that it's not something that comes easily, and that if you set it aside for any length of time, it's very hard to come back to it. You get rusty very, very fast. And so writing is very, very similar. There is no point in waiting for the muse to strike. The muse is very busy. The muse has a lot of calls to make. Okay? And if you're not at home when the muse calls, the muse will go somewhere else. And actually, I'm reading a book, which my other half gave me, by Jenny Boyd. And Jenny Boyd is the sister of Paddy Boyd, who was married to George Harrison. And she's a psychologist. And it's about creativity. It's quite interesting. It's about music, really. But I think it's, I think it may be Eric Clapton in the book, who describes he will occasionally wake up at night with a tune in his head. If Eric Clapton's probably a crap tune, to be perfectly honest. The middle of the road, I think, goes straight to Eric Clapton's house by this point. Or if it's Chris de Burgh, you'd kind of hope that he'd just go back to sleep, frankly. But anyway, what Eric Clapton says is that if you'll hear that tune in your head, and if you don't write it down and be annotated or hum it into your phone, you'll wake up in the morning, and it doesn't matter how much of an earworm the tune was at the time. When you wake up in the morning, you will have forgotten it completely. And he said, but the really weird thing is that 6 months later, you'll hear it on the radio being performed by somebody else. You have to kind of be aware and be alive to the fact that we all are pulling inspiration from this great big cloud around us. And if you are not willing to pick up your pen or to pick up your paintbrush or whatever it may be, it will pass and it will go to somebody else. And so these are all going to be very long questions, very long answers, very short questions.
Hope you're not hungry.
Yes, yeah. Hope I'm not hungry. Forget about you. So what I do is, you need a target for every day. And the difficulty for most writers have a second job, and the second job is being a writer. For most writers, I am very fortunate that I can support myself by writing. But most writers support themselves by being accountants or driving a bus or whatever it might be. And the writing, because I think when the Society of Authors in England did a survey of authors' earnings a few years back, the average was about 10,000 a year. It was much less than the average industrial wage, and a lot of people were earning less than 5,000 a year from their work. You do it for the love of writing, and if you're fortunate, yes, you may earn some money from it. So when you're writing initially, you have another job. I spent 5 years writing my first book because I was working as a journalist. I had another job. And so what you need to do is, it's very easy to say, oh, look, I'm going to take off. When my vacation time comes due, I will take 3 weeks off and I will write my great Russian novel. Well, your first day you might write some of your great Russian novel. You might spend time cleaning your desk. The rest of your holidays you're going to spend watching children's television in your vest. It has to become part of a daily routine. And so at the beginning, what you need to do is, we all have other things to distract us, and you don't want to be afraid of your desk, or afraid of your computer, or afraid of your typewriter. And so what you do is you set yourself a very easy target, and you say, I will do 200 words a day. Okay? 200 words is a third of a page. And you can do it on your lunch break, or you can do it, I knew one woman who used to get up, she started getting up half an hour earlier before the kids got up. And it was her half hour, and it was her undisturbed writing time. You set yourself a target and you meet it. And the moment you meet the target, close your book or shut down your computer or whatever, and don't feel guilty. You've done what you set out to do. And if you write 200 words a day for the first week, you've got 1,000 words done. And the next week you'll find yourself doing 200 words in the same time. You make it easy for yourself. But it has to be something that's done regularly, that's done every day. It has to become part of a routine. And so I, as a full-time writer, I will set myself a reasonably attainable goal, which for me is 1,000 words a day. And if I do more than 1,000 words a day, that's great. And there are some days when you think you've been touched by the finger of God, you know, and because there is, whenever I'm writing a book, there will be one day that you're gifted, where you'll get 3,000 words done, and you will not change a word when it goes into the book. And you will think, after 17 years, I have discovered the secret, you know, and lo and behold, in my life, I need never work again, you know. If it's this easy, fantastic, I've earned it. And then the next day you wake up and you're just crawling through it again. It's what you get for all those days you spend at the desk struggling. You get one day that's really, really, really good. So I'll do that. When I'm revising a book, it'll be one chapter a day. And I will occasionally, because I said I'm fortunate, I will go away. In the middle of writing a book, I will go away for 10 days, and I will write 3,000 words a day, every day. And I won't talk to anybody apart from ordering alcohol. You know, on that, yeah. And that's not unusual. And I will guide myself with cups of coffee or a movie or whatever it takes to get 3,000 words a day done. And I'm not unusual. It's interesting being in South Africa. But when I first came to South Africa and I was doing publicity in Cape Town, I stayed at the Villa Belmonte down in Cape, which I think unfortunately is closed now. But that was where Maeve Binchy used to stay. Maeve Binchy was a big fan of the Villa Belmonte. But Maeve, people read Maeve Binchy, I'm sure some people do that. Maeve, I think she found writing fiction quite hard. She was a journalist at heart, I think, and she didn't really enjoy writing fiction, or she found it a struggle. And when she stayed at the Villa Belmonte, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the owner of the Villa Belmonte would knock on her door, the door of the little suite that she had, and he would have a bottle of wine and a glass, okay? And she would open the door and he would say to Maeve, "Show me what you've done." And she would have to hand over the 1,000 or 1,500 words, because that was the deal she had with them. She'd say, "Give me wine only if I've done my work." And so that was like homework. She would show him the page and go, "There's your bottle of wine." And that was her done for the day. You know, she'd finished at 1 o'clock, she'd done what she said. So all writers have these little tricks to kind of, you reward yourself. Because it's not terribly easy. You need to find ways to keep going. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with, say, if I get my 200 or 500 words done, have a bun. Go and have a cup of coffee and read your book, and don't feel guilty. Because the great thing is that you, as a writer, if you're really serious about it, you'll always feel guilty when you're not working, or when you haven't done your little bit of work. If you've done your little bit of work, and I'm just saying, even today, and I've been doing publicity for the last 3 days, even today I got some work done. Just enough. I did 500 words. Just enough that I could feel I could come out and nothing did it. So, yeah, everybody has a routine, and everybody's routine is different. The other thing, when I began writing, I was very precious about where I wrote. I needed my office, and it needed to be quiet, and I needed to be wearing my fez and my smoking jacket. Nothing else, just a fez and a smoking jacket. The postman used to hate it when he had to deliver a parcel. But you know, as you go on and as I'm going on, because I travel a bit or I'm doing publicity, you get very good at taking your space with you. You know, if you feel that I have to be at home in my little corner, and there's some people who can only write that way, it's actually very useful to be able to say, well, what I'm doing is I'm going to write now. And it doesn't matter where I am, I'm going to write. And what you find, I can go into the noisiest coffee shop and I can write, as long as I haven't chosen the music. As long as it's not something that impacts upon me, I can write, and I won't notice the noise around me in any way at all. And that's really important to be. Every writer needs a space, but the kind of counterintuitively, the space doesn't have to be physical. You just need to have that sensibility, I think, and you develop that over time. So again, everybody has a routine, but you develop your own routine, and it takes time to find out the routine that suits you. But it is very important at the beginning not to set yourself unattainable goals, and not to be trying to fit too much into your day, and not to end up, because you'll end up not liking writing. And at the beginning it can't be a chore. It has to be something that you enjoy doing, because you're simply not being paid enough not to enjoy it. You know? All right?
Next question. Do you plot?
You mean books or against other people? I don't plot. There are as many ways of writing as there are writers. The analogy I loved is, E.L. Doctorow had a lovely analogy for the way that he wrote. And he said, for him writing a book was like driving a car along a dark country road late at night, where you only see as far as your headlights will take you. But as further you go, the more of the road you eat up, and then eventually you see the lights of home. And for me, it's a little bit like that. I will know the opening of the book. I may have one or two ideas, for instance, that happen along the way. But I will usually only know the opening. And I begin writing that, and I will do my 1,000 words, and when I've done that 1,000 words, I know what the next 1,000 words are going to be. And I'm quite happy to write like that. I like that process of discovering the book as it goes along. It can make writing quite hard, because I don't teach writing. This always comes as news to people at Hope University in Liverpool who are paying me to teach people how to write occasionally. But I don't think anyone here is going to call them and say, you know, look, bloke, he doesn't know anything about writing. She told us. Yeah. Oh, shit. But what I do know is this, that one of the reasons why not plotting is difficult is that what I do know about writing is that every book that I've written, I've wanted to throw it away after 20,000 words. Every single one of them. And I'm writing my 28th book at the moment. Every one of them I want to throw away. Because what happens is that you begin a project, and it doesn't matter what project it is, you begin it with enthusiasm. You know, when we start something new, we do it with a sense of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the thing that gets us off the starting blocks. But enthusiasm never lasts. Enthusiasm is a bit like lust and passion in marriage. It wanes. It kind of pops up again later, you'd hope, figuratively and literally. But you know, it wanes. And what sustains you is the fact that you're prepared to put in a bit of hard work along the line and accept the fact that you're not always going to be massively in love with the person that you're with, but you will always like them, I hope. And writing is a little bit like that. That first burst of enthusiasm gets you over. If you're writing a novel, the first 10,000 words. If you're writing a short story, the first couple of pages. And then it wanes. It's part of the process. It wanes. And what happens then is doubt sets in. And doubt is part of the process. In fact, and if you don't have any doubt, you're a sociopath. You're a psychopath. You don't belong in normal society. So doubt, you have to live with doubt. And even though I said I've written 28 books now, and I know that it's part of the process, it's still hugely debilitating. And so what happens is you begin to doubt what you're doing. And I think somewhere between 20 and 40,000 words is when novels get abandoned. If you get over 40,000 words, you're probably going to finish a book. And so what happens is you think, oh, this wasn't a very good idea, and it's a bit like the analogy is hitting the wall in marathon running. If anybody is lunatic enough to run marathons in here, is there anybody who runs marathons? I love this guy. I like the fact that there's somebody. I always like the fact that somebody is running because I feel like it gets me off the hook. But if you run marathons, I go no. But see the guy in the chicken suit. He's running for me. He's running for both of us. So in marathon running, you hit a wall, and the wall I think happens as it's about 18 or 19 miles. I think frequently, isn't it? It can vary where you hit it, but I think you usually hit it in the last third or quarter of the race, and it's as much psychological as physical. I think. You begin to think, I haven't trained properly and my limbs are sore and maybe if I drop out, it's not going to really matter if I drop out, I'm a bit tired and everybody will understand and I can come back again. And the thing is, if you do drop out, I know from talking to people that a lot of people don't run a marathon again. That for some people you just break. You think, actually it's not for me and I'll just do half marathons from now on. And that wall sets in writing much earlier. And when it does, you get the siren call of the new idea, which is the little voice in your head that goes, that was a terrible idea. It was just always destined to let you down. But I am the shiny new idea, and I will never let you down. And if you go with me, we will gamble like lambs through the heather together, and all will enjoy it. And you could use the marriage analogy. It's a little bit like you have an argument with, because I'm a bloke, with her indoors, the old ball and chain, and you go in and you go into a bar and there's cocktails and there's some dolly bird in the corner who smiles at you because talking to you and she understands all your problems, and you think, well, if I ditch her indoors and go away with her, everything will be great, because clearly the problem was her, not me, and then of course, 6 months later you're begging your wife to take you back. Obviously I have no experience in this. I understand from a friend how it goes. And so with writers and with anything, any kind of creative area, you will have that call of the new idea, and it's very tempting to put aside what you're doing and start again. But Salman Rushdie said writers are people who finish things. Ray Bradbury said, Ray Bradbury said professionals are amateurs who finish things. Amateurs leave things unfinished. You don't go to the mechanic, and if he only fixes two of the brakes on your car and says, "Oh, it'll be all right." I'd be careful on hills, but you wouldn't go back to him. That's not the job that you paid the person to do. So writers finish things, and the problem is if you start abandoning projects, you set a pattern for what's to come. And I've been talking to school kids this week, and I've been trying to explain this to them. That you begin your creative life with, probably begin life in general, to be honest, but you begin your creative life with a finite amount of confidence. It's like a brick, it's like a stone, but it's soft. And every time you abandon something, you chip away a little piece of it, and it never comes back. And if you chip away enough pieces of it, you don't have any of it left. So you have to finish things. And so if you find that plotting or laying stuff out ahead of time makes it easier to finish, then God bless you, plot to your heart's content. And sometimes I wish I was better at plotting. I wish I was the person who lays things out, because it's much more tempting, or that doubt is much more insidious when you don't plot. When you're 40,000 words into it and you can't see the end. And you think, well, actually, I may actually have started a book that I can't finish. Because it can happen. I remember I interviewed Mike Connolly, and he wrote a book called Void Moon. And Void Moon's an interesting failure. And he said that was a book where he got 60,000 words into it and realised that he'd gone wrong at about word 10,000. And he said, I had no choice but to throw away that 50,000 words and go back to the beginning. And the book still doesn't work. There's too much of a... It's almost like the trauma of what happened affected the book so badly that it really couldn't quite be rescued. So it can happen. You just have to kind of have faith in yourself that actually it's not going to happen, that's not going to be a problem. And to be fair, that's the only time I've ever heard of somebody having to do that. So you finish everything. But Ian Rankin, I was talking to one of the ladies at one of the other tables earlier. Ian can't write a book until he knows the title. He's not going to write an untitled book. He needs to know the title before he begins. And I have friends who, the two extremes in mystery writing is like any area of writing. There are no inferior genres. There's just inferior writing. But the two extremes I know of in mystery fiction are Jeffrey Deaver and James Lee Burke. And Jeffrey Deaver, it's been here a couple of times. His outline is 75,000 words long. I write an outline on the back of a beer map. That's an outline, okay? 75,000 words, that's kind of a book, okay? You can just put a cover on that, Jeff, and sell it, all right? But no, he lays it out particularly. He also, I know he also does, he does something that Will Self does, which is he has a wall of his office that he puts Post-it notes on. Really neat. I think Jeff's desk is quite neat. And so you'll have Post-it on this wall would just be lines of Post-it notes with plot points and characters, and he will move them around as he's working on the book. And he did say that once he left the heater on underneath it, he came up and it was like dead butterflies all over the floor. So that's how he works. And I think when his novels work, there is the sense of almost like being on a well-designed roller coaster, that somebody has anticipated all of the twists and turns. And when they don't work, they can feel contrived. There's no two ways about it. And then the other extreme is James Lee Burke. And James Lee Burke will, and I think James Burke is probably for me he's the great living American crime novelist. Burke will finish a novel on Thursday. On Friday morning, we'll sit down, type chapter 1, and begin writing, because he believes that the book is out there or in there somewhere. Burke probably believes it's out there, to be honest. And if you're open to it, and if you're at your desk and if you're writing, it will come. And Burke's books are very, to be fair, they're much more character-driven than Jeff's books are. Jeff's books are very plot-driven. Burke's books are almost entirely character-driven. And that may be interesting in that way too, that if you're writing character-driven fiction, laying it out may not work quite as well, And when Burke's books work well, they feel very organic. They are organic novels. When they don't work, they're unintelligible. They're fantastic to read, but if somebody asks you to explain, explain the plot of the last James Lee Burke book, you go, I don't know. I went to see, I'm a huge Burke fan, and he doesn't travel because he could only travel when he was a drunk. He could only fly when he was an alcoholic. And when he stopped drinking, he couldn't get on planes anymore, which is why he's never toured outside America. And I did. It was like Muhammad going to the mountain. He was up in Missoula, Montana, and I went to interview him. And I asked him what Burning Angel was about. I think was the book that had come out. I said, just, because I'd read it. And I said, what exactly was Burning Angel about? So well, it's kind of about, Latin America and the aftermath of Vietnam as well. And I kind of nodded, because that's in the book. But I said, but what's it about? And I realized that Bert didn't really know either. He didn't really care, What mattered was the experience of reading it and the richness of the language and the beauty of the characterization and the evocation of that landscape of Louisiana. And actually the plot was just there to carry you through those things. So, so the issue arose, curiously, everything you do should be an experiment. If you've done it once a certain way, you can do that. It depends upon what kind of writer you want to be. You can write to a formula, and there are writers, particularly in genre fiction, who write to a formula and produce a very small variation on a theme every year. And they kind of atrophy as writers. And as a reader, you'll have picked up the book and you think, I've read this one. It had a different cover and different name on it, but I've read it. And I don't want to be that kind of writer. And so I think everything should be, you should throw away the stuff you knew before and you should try something different. And so I'd never collaborated. Because novelists, particularly by their nature, are not collaborative. If you think about it, we create a world by ourselves in a little office, and then we share it with the reader, and the reader in turn creates their own world from it. It's like, the relationship is always like an hourglass. It has that little moment of meeting in the middle. But I wanted to write a series of science, so I'm very interested in experimenting with genre. I was very interested in science fiction. And I felt science fiction was very male-oriented, and I wanted to write something that was very female-driven. And it was going to have a 16-year-old girl at its heart. And as a 48-year-old man, I have no business knowing about 16-year-old girls. That only trouble can lie that way. And to be fair, when I was a 16-year-old boy, I knew nothing about 16-year-old girls. They were an alien species to me. I'm still slightly resentful about that, but never mind. And I thought that if I was going to write this book, I needed some female input. And Jenny, my other half, is South African and a journalist and has her own novel under submission. I said to her, look, would you be interested in trying to, because I needed a female perspective. And it was normally difficult because you can't collaborate with somebody if you don't plot. What are you going to tell them? So I was forced to think ahead, and I was forced to write in a very different way. And it was hugely difficult for me. I realized that it was really, the books, I'm really proud of the books. But when I went back to my own way of writing again, I wasn't plotting again. I found it immensely difficult. And also, piece of advice, don't work with people who put glass in your food. every argument is personal, collaboration is very difficult. I really enjoyed doing it, and the books are better for having collaborated, but immensely difficult. Sorry, there you go. That was great. Again, you're never going to get through all those questions. It'll be here 8 in the morning. You'll be like, God, does he ever stop talking? Don't give him any more wine.
When you wrote the first Charlie Parker novel, did you think of it as a series, or was it a series?
No, nobody thinks that way. If you are, again, you're one of these psychopathic people who believes that, yes, the world is mine. We need to come on to that, actually, because it's something to do with self-publishing. I'm kind of anxious to talk about that. But no, most people write their first novel. But I spent all these years writing this novel, and it had been rejected by so many editors. And I had one agent who kind of believed in it, and I persevered, and eventually it was accepted. And I remember my first instinct was, can I have it back and I'll do it properly? That you get completely taken by surprise. You think, oh, okay, yeah, I know you like it, but you can't like that. I'll give me a year and I'll get it right. And effectively, they do that anyway. They give me a year to get it right. So no, not at all. And it was only about the fifth novel, I think. Certainly the fifth Parker novel, where I thought, actually, they're not going to come and reclaim my furniture. There's going to be some huge bloke going, did you buy that with their money? Did you buy that TV with their money? And suddenly you're sitting in an empty flat with just, your cat in a flower pot. No, I didn't. And in a way that was good, because the novels had developed quite organically over time. And I realized what I wanted to do, which was, I felt that mystery fiction, very often if you read mystery novels, the central character didn't have a memory. He wouldn't remember that last year he was hunting down some guy who was turning people into Christmas trees, you know. And I thought, well, if you looked at fantasy literature in particular, historical fiction, characters often had memories, and there was a kind of bigger arc story behind what was happening. It's like the difference between watching, say, Columbo in the 70s and watching The Wire or The Sopranos now. Part of the pleasure is seeing that story reveal itself over time. And I thought, why couldn't you do that in mystery fiction? Why couldn't you create a series of novels that, yes, people could read in any order they wanted, but if you read them in order, it was clear that a larger story was taking place, and you were getting little snatches of it. And somebody who might have been mentioned in the first book will only become important in the 11th or 12th book. And so it's, and I'm quite glad that's what happened. You will, if you do get accepted, you do get taken by surprise, I think. And I certainly did.
Do you have an idea of where the series is going?
Well, if the doctor, I'm a sensible man, and I go to the doctor once a year to get my workings checked. And if he were to say to me, I wouldn't plan any trips beyond December, don't buy any milk that's going to expire in January, I'd probably know how to end it, or give a conclusion to that larger plot. Although whether it's what people anticipate or what they're expecting, I don't know. But I think because of the nature of those books, you have to at some point give people a kind of conclusion. And you hope that it is emotionally satisfying after all the years they've spent with these characters. Because the other thing I would say about fiction, it's true of all good fiction, there is a perception sometimes that genre fiction, and particularly mystery fiction, is plot driven, it's about plot. All good fiction is about character. Yeah, everything starts with character. Character plot is what people do. And you can shoehorn, it's not an exact science. You do inevitably to some degree, if you're writing a mystery novel, there is an element of plot idealization to it, and your characters kind of slot in around it, but it's more a kind of framework. You can have a plot-driven, the Da Vinci Code is a plot-driven novel. It has almost no characterization at all. It has actually one of the laziest pieces of characterization in literary history, where Langdon is described as looking at Harrison Ford in tweed. Short of actually sticking a picture of Harrison Ford in the book with an arrow going, looks a bit like this. Could not be lazier. And you can read it. There are many flaws with the Da Vinci Code, but a lot of people are reading it in airports and quite enjoying it. But it's a bit like eating a Happy Meal, where you finish it, you feel slightly unsatisfied and also mildly ashamed of yourself. So it's not the ideal way to write. And we read for character. If you think about mystery novels, most people wanted to read last. People say, I read the last Jack Reacher book, I read the last Kay Scarpetta book, or whatever it might be. We associate the writers we love with the characters they've created. And plots of mystery novels, or with romantic fiction, or whatever, don't change very much. There's a kind of template in a mystery novel. There's a crime, there's a solution, and most of us probably couldn't tell you the plot of the last mystery novel we read, but we'll remember the characters. And one of the reasons we go back to mystery novels again and again, and one of the reasons why they've been so consistently popular over the years, is that they were for a long time one of the few literary forms that allowed you to revisit the same characters year after year after year. And part of the pleasure lay in spending time with the characters. And you could forgive the odd plot lapse, where it wasn't great, for the pleasure. There's a lady there who goes, I forgive nothing. But the great example is to go back to Patricia Cornwell. Cornwell, those early books are fascinating. Body of evidence. Nobody had written books quite like that before, where a crime was investigated through the medium of the human body. I'd argue a very female way of writing. Men don't tend to write forensic fiction. It's not really a male preserve. It's more female. And I think it may be to do perhaps with a degree of comfort with the body that men simply don't have. And a huge generalization, I'm just thinking aloud. But Cornwell went into this appalling dip. It was like a plane going down. You could just see it. It was all one-way traffic. She wrote things like The Isle of Dogs, where she thought she was funny. She's funny the way Goethe's funny, It's funny the way The Sorrows of Young Werther is funny. And then people didn't stop buying Patricia Cornwell books. Did you stop? You're hardcore. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of you. She was still getting $20 million a book or something, She wasn't hurting. So people were prepared to forgive this for the pleasure of spending time with Scarpetta and her annoying niece. You know, so that's the thing about it. It's character. Everything is character, and you have to spend. And I remember when I interviewed James Lee Burke, I was asking him. You know, in a mystery novel, you have obviously characters who have more light in them than dark, and characters who have more dark in them than light. And Burke creates great grotesque villains. And I asked him, you know, how do you create these people? Where do they come from? And he said, they are nothing to do with me, he said. He said, I am the good people in my books. You know, I am the moral people in my books. These people are alien to me. And he was lying. It simply wasn't true. You know, Burke, and I think it's not giving away secrets or anything. I think when he was an alcoholic, he was a mean drunk. I remember what somebody was saying to me, he was a hard man. The best thing he ever did was to stop drinking. And he's, you know, now he's one of the most joyous men you could ever meet. There's some lovely footage of him on the net. To see him interviewed is just a real pleasure. And he was just such an inspiration to me. I've no word against him. But that's not to say that the man didn't have flaws. And I think, I've thought for a long time about why he answered the question that way. And I think maybe he didn't want even to admit to himself that he was drawing on an aspect of his character that he really wanted to leave in the past. And when you're writing, you can't just be the good people in your books. You know, writing is a bit like dreaming, where they say in your dreams you're every character in your dreams. You're every character in your books. And no matter how bad they are, you have to try and find, somebody once said everyone has his reasons. You know, nobody perceives themselves as the villains of the piece. You know, everybody is kind of doing they're either doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, or they're just doing the right thing. And so you have to find the little part of yourself, even for the worst of characters, you have to find the little part of yourself that's jealous or envious or angry or filled with rage or filled with grief. And you put it's like a seed that you plant in the character. Because otherwise it has no truth to it. They're just empty shells. You may as well go back to the Dan Brown School of Characterization and stick a picture of somebody with twirly mustaches in and go, the bad guy. You know, that's not the way things are.
As someone who's just finished A Time of Torment, I'm going to move over it a bit.
I've given every sin I've ever committed to somebody in my books. Every one of them. I'm trying to think, which one was that exactly? Yeah, show me the page.
And I have a last question.
Okay.
According to your press release, you have worked as a journalist, a barman, a local government
You asked me what a dog's body is. That's what you're going to ask me, isn't it?
official.
Okay, all right.
A local government official, a waiter, and a gopher at Harrods. Which career has helped you the most to write novels and create characters?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think most writers I went to college with one of the distant scions of the Guinness clan, and she was reasonably, she wasn't at the very wealthy end of it, but there was a bit of money in the family. And she went off to Mexico after we graduated to write her book. And she came back, of course, with a lovely tan after 4 months, and minus a boyfriend, I seem to recall, but with no book. And I think writers often end up doing a lot of different jobs before they become writers. It's because it's very hard to conceive of yourself as a writer. You think you're going to be, like you said, the bartender, or the busman, or working for Harrods, or whatever it might be. And eventually, either through luck or just pure resignation to the fact that you become unemployable, you end up having to try to grasp the nettle of being a writer. Journalism, I mean, on a purely practical level, because it taught me that you can't, what I said to you right at the beginning, you can't wait for the mood to come to strike you. You know, you have to go and sit down. In journalism, if you're being paid to fill 400 words in the newspaper, and if you don't do it, the newspaper will find someone else who will do it. And if you're not in the mood to write, the newspaper doesn't care. You know, and if you sit down and begin writing, the next day when people pick up the newspaper and read your 400 words, they won't know that you weren't in the mood to write. You know, you'll have finessed it. It also got me to the point where the ideal thing for a journalist is that you hand something to the news desk and they don't hand it back to you. And it goes into the newspaper exactly as you've written it. The sub-editors don't have to cut the last paragraph off it to fit. Nobody has to change a word. You've done exactly what they wanted you. It's called being a good hack. And it's meant as praise. He's a good hack. He gets it out. He hacks it out. It taught me that anything can be researched. If you ask somebody, I don't believe there's such a thing as a stupid question. If I don't know the answer to it, it's not a stupid question. I genuinely don't know the answer, and so tell me, and don't patronise me. Just tell me. So I'm very good at going and researching. So in purely practical terms, and it knocked a lot of the edges off me. There are people who will not have been editors who will go, you don't change a word of my deathless prose. Every word a pearl. And journalism teachers should actually, so a guy with the old style news will tell you it's just terrible, rewrite it. And they're right. And even now, my relationship with my editor, generally speaking, if she says something needs to be corrected, it needs to be corrected. Can I just, there's one thing I do want to talk about. I come from a slightly different dispensation in publishing, I suppose, in that I began in pre-internet days. And when I submitted my first novel, I submitted a bit like Burke did. I photocopied the first 3 chapters, I wrote my covering letter, little synopsis, sent out 70 photocopies to every agent and publisher in the Writers and Artists Yearbook, got rejected, had one agent come back to me who liked my book, worked on it for another 2 years to get it right, resubmitted it, and was published. I think, I doubt that any writer of my age coming into it now would even conceive of doing that. The internet has been given us many good things. The ease of self-publishing is not one of them. Time is the friend of writers. Time is the friend of anything you produce. And we've entered an age where we like instantaneous responses to things. If you send an email to somebody or a tweet or you're on Facebook, you don't want to wait days for them to respond. You want the response within minutes, usually. I mean, Twitter's a great example of that, where it's a dialogue going on constantly. And I think, I've been to writing, I don't go to many conventions anymore, but I remember the last one I was at was Harrogate, and a woman said, oh, well, I sent my novel out, and I never get anything within 3 months, so I published it myself. That's a disaster. That's not good for you. You kind of have to resist the urge, because there are so many easy ways to put it out there now. If you write something, and I'm sharing, if you had Stephen Lever in here, he would give you a very different view on this, where he thinks it's quite okay to put your first draft out there. People only paying 99 pence for it, what do they expect? For him, quality is related to cost, it's a bit of an economic exercise. I'm not sure Stephen is possibly as concerned with the artistic intricacies, perhaps. And we've been bedeviled a bit by people like Jeff Bezos, who says, that Bezos has turned writers into people who are producers for niche areas of the market. And your success as a writer is related to the number of downloads you have and the amount of money you make from it. And if you go on a lot of these self-publishing websites, if you look at people like Barry Eisler, who use these awful phrases like gatekeepers and things, you'll see very little discussion about the quality of the craft. It's about money and downloads and how much I earn from Amazon, and I believe that for a while we thought that the whole publishing industry was going to collapse. For 5 years, about 5 years ago, we really looked like things were in trouble, and there were a lot of people dancing on the grave and saying, well, publishing houses are going to go to the wall, and everybody's going to be reading from Kindles or from e-readers, and most books will be downloads. And what's happened is, as with any new technology, a state of equilibrium has come about, particularly in the last year or so. Sales of printed books have gone up. Independent bookstores have started to open again. But there are actually two parallel industries have emerged. There is the print, there is one related to the print. Sorry, am I talking too much? I just want to finish this one thing, okay, before you just...
Do you know why they've gone up? I just have to interrupt you. It's because we're all colouring in.
Well, no, it's not just that. If we're going to be facetious, may as well stop. I mean, it's clearly not just that. There is what we found is that if you look at the top 10 bestseller list in England, it bears almost no relation to the top 10 bestsellers in the self-publishing world, or in the books that are being downloaded. And it is almost like a twin industry has emerged, which is really a lot of people who self-publish, who write in genre, who read other self-published authors, who don't really buy printed books at all anymore, who mostly read these downloaded books, who don't pay full price for a book, who believe that really the optimum price is about $3.99 for a book. And I still believe that there is a distrust of expertise. We saw it during the Brexit debate where Michael Gove said, we don't want to hear from experts anymore. You know, we just want to hear what we want to hear. And sometimes if a publisher tells you or an editor tells you, look, it's not good enough. Our temptation now is to go, right, so I'm going to publish it. You know, I don't care what you think. And yet, I met a woman when I was in Zagreb who said, she's South African, and she came up to me and she said, I'm very annoyed. I want to publish, I've ghostwritten some books, and now I want to publish my novel. And all of these gatekeepers, the minute I hear that word, the conversation is pretty much over between us. These gatekeepers are stopping me from being published. You have no entitlement to be published. You can publish. Nobody has to publish you. You know, that's a very different thing. You know, to say that an editor or a publisher is a gatekeeper is like me saying that Jurgen Klopp of Liverpool is preventing me from my dream of playing on the right wing against Manchester United next season. I have a ball, I have a Liverpool shirt with my name on it that a friend of mine bought for me, I have a pair of boots, I have everything that I need. So why are you not letting me play football? Okay, Jurgen? And Jurgen will go, I'm not letting you play football because actually I just don't think you're good enough. But if you want to come back in a year or two's time when you practice a bit, then we'll have the discussion again. You have to decide if you're serious about writing what kind of writer you're going to be. Are you going to be the person who kind of shrugs his shoulders and go, actually these people know nothing, and I'm going to put my book out there and I'll make my 99 cents and I'll sell 100,000 copies to people and friends? Or will I go back to the drawing board? Will I get better? Will I test myself in the league, I suppose? You know, will I put myself up against the best? And I think again, it's not an exact science, and the lines of demarcation become muddled. But if you look at very few people emerge from the self-publishing industry as successful authors. E.L. James became a phenomenon after she was picked up by a major publisher. Roddy Doyle is one of the few people I can think of who's actually emerged to actually get to Booker level. It's quite rare. Sorry. And I know there are going to be people who disagree with me, and it's an entirely personal view, and it's not entirely uncontroversial. And I think if Stephen Leather was here, you would have a very different conversation and would hear the exact opposite. So, but not bad to hear. Shouldn't always be hearing things we agree with. Yes,
I'm sorry, I just have to ask you a question. The whole idea about self-publishing and traditional publishing is always a debate that will go around. And I actually think that self-publishing is not bad. Just listen out.
No, I'm not interrupting you.
Because I think what happens, a lot of writers do not understand the whole concept of traditional publishing. And then at the end of the day, especially if you are a first-time published author, and I know there are a lot of aspiring authors here, it's not a bad idea to understand the whole marketing, the distribution process that you're involved as well. Am I right or wrong in the whole setting? So for me, from that self-publishing, because I know you say the 99 cents, it doesn't always work, especially in South Africa.
Sure.
I don't think a lot of people, well, they might download, but you see the author and the author's book is not good, you're not going to buy it again. And I think that is good from a self-publishing and a pre-published author kind of process. So there is some merit in the whole, but I think what you're trying to get at...
I'm talking almost purely in creative terms, in qualitative terms.
I agree with you.
And yet marketing, but again, the relationship between self-publishing industry and traditional publishing are so different. You know, as a writer, I don't spend my time, and I don't trust anybody who spends their time on Amazon, on Twitter, constantly working to up their ratings, which is what you end up doing in self-publishing. Self-published authors spend more time on marketing than they do on writing. It's inevitable, unfortunately. And in general, one of the lovely things about being published is that actually somebody else looks after that for me. The second thing is, and it's very important, publishers actually, the publishing industry, it's a bit like the music industry. 90% of books don't make any money. And they're often published by editors who simply, and an editor in a publishing house that simply believes in them. And it's kind of hoping it finds its audience, but it's kept supported by the fact that James Patterson will sell 20 million copies of a book, Lee Child will sell X number of copies of a book. That money filters down. You know, for all its flaws, the industry filters down and creates new talent. The self-publishing model, the model perpetuated, I think, by Amazon and similar, has no interest in doing that. Its sole interest is in you as the sole provider making money. It's not interested in supporting your audience. And when you look at the earnings of writers, of published writers, conventionally published writers, as opposed to self-published writers, conventionally published writers still get better paid. They still make more money. Because publishing, you know, there is, so I agree with you. I think there's a lot that you can learn from self-publishing. And I think there are some people who, yes, but I think it's the ease of self-publishing. The ease of getting something into print is not necessarily good for writers and for the quality of what you're doing, because the temptation is too strong to put it out there. And I think, you know, we have changed as people in the way that we consume material, in the way that we use the internet. And I think it's all happened very quickly. You know, if you think of it, it's a revolution in publishing that's happened in about the last 7 or 8 years. And we have never seen anything like it before, not since Gutenberg. And so, and again, like any new technology, there are hiccups along the way, and we will find a balance. But I worry that I just don't see much discussion about quality, about developing as a writer and improving as a writer. All I see is pounds and pence.
But don't you think it will eventually change?
It will.
I think that eventually those people that are not good are going to fall out.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, but there's so much white noise. If you think of it, it's so easy to self-publish now. Before, at least you had to print the book and get it in a bookstore. Now it's very hard to find the good stuff. You know, there's just so much out there. But that's true of mainstream publishing as well. There are a lot of books. And that's not, and I agree, you know, I wanted to take quite an extreme position on this. Simply because playing devil's advocate slightly. Because I worry that I don't see enough of that discussion in the self-publishing community about the importance of developing as a writer, maybe before you actually start putting your work out there. You know, take a breath. Don't put it out there immediately. It's like, you know, don't go on the internet and buy stuff on eBay when you've been drinking. You know, better wait until the morning when you don't send that email to your former boyfriend or girlfriend after the second bottle of wine. You know, it's a bit like that with publishing. Wait until the morning, okay? I just wanted to say, I know people want to start. They want to start.
They're going to start.
Oh yeah, I'm looking to eat a main course, so I can talk and you can eat if you want to do that.
Okay, are you ready?
We haven't had starters yet.
Oh, they haven't had starters yet. No starters. Oh, wine. Yeah.
Guys, who else here we have to show this question?
It was me.
I'd love to talk about Charlie Parker. John, I love your novels. I think, talking to Pam, I sort of started with Dark Angel. And I just really wanted to ask you about this sort of spirituality side of the series. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that clearly fits into sort of a category of vampires and things like this. And this sort of blurs the edges. And I'd like to hear your comments on, there's definitely this spirituality, dark side, and I find it fascinating.
Oh, the question, just in case for people at the back, is about the aspects of the spiritual and the metaphysical and the supernatural in the Parker books. Are people okay for me to keep talking? I'm quite happy. I'm not really very hungry, so I'm quite happy to just keep being filled with wine. Maybe we just, and then people can ask questions as it suits them. You know, you're going to get a slight lecture on mystery fiction here, okay? But I hope that's okay. The roots of crime fiction lie in rationalism, scientific rationalism. The belief that the world can be understood by a process of logic and deduction. And that goes back a long way. Edgar Allan Poe, who creates the first serious character in English, in Dupin, called those stories Tales of Ratiocination. You have Arthur Conan Doyle creating Sherlock Holmes. This process of deduction. Hercule Poirot and Agatha Christie talks about using the little grey cells. It comes down to approaching the world in a logical, deductive manner. And that is that's a post-Enlightenment world. What is curious about these people? Poe, the least rational human being ever to have set foot on this planet. Okay? There's a lovely story about him. He left his dying wife's deathbed to go looking for his a woman he had fixated upon, who he understood was getting married. He turned up at her house at the dead of night, soaking wet with rain, made himself repeated cups of tea, and methodically chopped up all the radishes in the house. Okay, this is not the, you're not going to think, actually, I'm going to ditch this guy and marry you instead, radish guy, very odd man. Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, believed in the Cottingley fairies. Even when it was proved to be a fraud, Conan Doyle wouldn't accept it. He would go to seances with Harry Houdini. He and Houdini were close friends, because Houdini was a famous debunker of false sightings. And Conan Doyle wanted to find a real psychic because his son had been killed in the First World War and his wife had died quite young. And he believed that if he could find a true medium, sorry, there's a subtle difference between the two, I know, that he would be able to contact them again. And he spent his life believing it. He became very immersed in esoteric societies. And if you look at one of the earliest crime novels in English is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, probably the first great crime novel. A book suffused with the fear of the supernatural. So right from the beginning, there's a tension in the genre between the rational and the anti-rational. And I think, I come from a Catholic, I was born Catholic, I still have, I'm not a very good Catholic, I kind of go once a year at Christmas, but I still have a faith, I think. And I come from a country, and I don't mean this in any facetious way, it's very hard to come from a Catholic country and be entirely rationalist. They sit uneasily with each other. And people are not rational. People don't behave rationally. People, occasionally they do, but mostly they behave emotionally. There's a tension between the two. And the world, the more we find out about the universe, the stranger it begins to appear to us. All of these assumptions we had about the way that the universe works, or the rules that it plays by, it actually doesn't play by them at all, or it plays by completely contradictory sets at the same time. And in Ireland, we never really wrote very much mystery fiction. Our genre fiction was fantasy literature. And supernatural fiction, the cornerstones of the Gothic tradition, are created by Anglo-Irish writers. It's Stoker's Dracula, Maturin's Melmoth the Wanderer, Sheridan Le Fanu's Uncle Silas, and The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. You'd add Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And there you kind of have 6 pillars to support the whole structure. So we've always been very comfortable with folktales and fairy tales. And when I began writing, I realized that all writers are the products of what they read. Wilde said that all writers should read more than they will ever write. And so I had these twin traditions. I loved the American crime novel, not the British crime novel, the American crime novel. I loved its compassion, I loved its sense of justice, social justice. And yet I came out of this tradition that was very comfortable with the metaphysical, with the spiritual. And the writer William Gaddis, the American, once said that in the next world we have justice, in this world we have the law. And mystery fiction is very interested in the difference between law and justice. Law and justice are not the same thing. As anyone who's ever got involved with the law will know, the law only works for lawyers. And so I was interested, I suppose, in exploring some of the implications of what Gaddis was saying. And also, I write, like a lot of mystery writers who are probably veering towards the slightly darker side, I have a character in search of redemption. And if you come from a Catholic background or a Christian background, that word redemption comes freighted with an awful lot of baggage. Redemption requires sacrifice. And increasingly in the Parker novels, it's clear that Parker realizes that a sacrifice will be called for. And the people around him have begun to realize that too, that you don't get away from it unmarked. The choice for me was to either import the conventions of the American crime novel to Ireland, which I didn't think would work, or to bring something of that European perspective, something of my background to that genre and try to change it slightly. And so as the novels have gone, they become increasingly interested in that aspect of it. It's become increasingly pronounced. Because I find there's a richness to it. But I also accept that there are a lot of people who despise what I do. And I don't come around to the House of Horseman's Read. There are people who believe that the crime novel really should be set in Aspic, somewhere between the birth of Sherlock Holmes and the death of Poirot. And intensely dislike the mixing of genres. They really do, and don't believe it as any part of it. To the extent that if you set a crime novel in the American West, it becomes by default a Western for them. If you set it in outer space, it's science fiction. They have a very limited view of what it is. And what I think is very interesting is that over the last 10 years, I realize that the next generation has come up. And they are very comfortable with mixing genres. They've read graphic novels, they've read, they've been brought up on horror fiction, they've been brought up on a kind of a televisual diet that was very different from mine. They don't see anything wrong with mixing it up. There's a wonderful series of novels, I'm trying to remember, I think it's called The Last Policeman, which is about a policeman who's, as the world is coming to an end, the people realize that there's, I think it's, if I remember right, there's an asteroid or a meteor heading for Earth, and civilization is broken down. And he becomes the only person who still wants to investigate crimes, who still believes that it is important for people morally not to allow this integration. It is effectively it's speculative fiction, but it's also a wonderful piece of mystery fiction, which I don't think would have been written 10 years ago, or might have been, but wouldn't have been put in the mystery section of the bookstore. So there's a widening, and part of some of that is due to readers as well. Readers are always ahead of critics. They always are a couple of steps ahead. They're much more open-minded than critics are, I think. I hope that kind of answered it. Lady, hello.
Thank you. I'm very interested to hear you say that you're interested in science fiction. What science fiction interests you? Is it Asimov? Is it
Well, it's
Bradbury?
no, that's right. Well, actually, the one who led me, the first science fiction novel I ever read was *The Invisible Man* by H.G. Wells, and I then went on to read *War of the Worlds*. But John Wyndham for me,
Yeah.
the Chrysalids, the Midwich Cuckoos, Chucky, they were pivotal books for me. But I think it's very interesting talking to young people about science fiction. It's a genre that 80% of science fiction readers are under the age of 45.
Yeah.
It's almost like the flip side of mystery fiction, where a lot of readers are much older. And I think it's because it tends to attract, and has always attracted people who are dissatisfied with the world the way it is. It's why I think it attracts politically extreme people. That Asimov era included an awful lot of very right-wing writers. John W. Campbell, extraordinary fascist, essentially. Robert Heinlein, a libertarian at the very, very least. And then in the 60s, a second wave came up with people like Ursula Le Guin, who were very much a reaction to that tradition, who were very liberal, quite left-wing, part of the feminist movement at the time, wanted to get away from all of that. And I think there was an issue of, I was possibly I can't remember that very famous journalist that Campbell edited, where there were two adverts taken out, one pro the Vietnam War and one against the Vietnam War by writers. It was a tension. So what I like about it is I think that it is I like the fact that Margaret Atwood calls it speculative fiction.
Yeah.
You know.
But your most favorite recent writer of science fiction, who would you say? What I'm trying to ask you is, have you read the novels of Ian M. Banks?
Yeah, I see, but I prefer. It's a bit like people separating to John D. MacDonald and Ross MacDonald. I prefer Ian Banks.
I do too.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't. I entertain both.
Oh, okay, yeah. And what I find I've read people like Peter Hamilton and Dan Simmons as well. What I find about science fiction, slightly, is that they're very long. You know, and now I've reached the age where if I pick up a book that's 800 pages, I think, look, if the doctor tells me I'm not well, I may not live to finish this, you know. Whereas if I pick up The Great Gatsby, even if I'm given 24 hours, I'll probably finish The Great Gatsby.
Ironically, Banks didn't manage to finish his last novel.
That's right. Yeah. I think those books are very interesting, but I think I'm slightly prejudiced against them because I kind of wished he was still writing as Ian Banks. But they are very, very interesting. A bit like mystery fiction, a lot of my reading is, I wonder, is it a product of age? And people can disagree with me here again. I find that I've become very aware of gaps in my knowledge. There's so much, we were saying earlier, if you go into a bookstore on a Thursday, I know it's a Thursday in Ireland, when the new releases come out, and suddenly all the books that were just there last week have been shifted off the table to the back of the store, and there's a whole lot of new books that I'm never going to have the time to read. And you get a bit overwhelmed. And I realise I haven't read all of Dickens yet. There's still a couple of Raymond Chandler novels I haven't read. You know, I'm trying to familiarise myself with. I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be about jazz and classical music. I find that I'm trying to fill in gaps in my knowledge a little bit more. So some of the science fiction I've been reading is older science fiction because I want to familiarise myself more with where the genre came from to begin with.
All the science fiction is more utopian.
Well, actually, it's interesting that a lot of young adult fiction, science fiction, is dystopian. It's sold as dystopian fantasy because I think young people are instinctively dissatisfied with the society they see around them and want to change it. And so there's a great deal of appeal in Divergent, in The Hunger Games, because it presents society as dysfunctional and suggests that young people are the people who can change it and improve it. And I think that's what I love about it, because as you get older, that idealism kind of does fall away from you slightly. You get more comfortable in the grey area. You're trying to think, well, I have to accept that not everything can be changed.
And that to me is what is the word I'm trying to find? That is what informs your Charlie Parker
Well, the church.
Grey area.
Well, but also that idea that to not. Parker is a person who can't turn away, because to turn away makes you culpable. You know, if you turn away from the problem, you become part of the problem, and you can't leave people to suffer because it's inconvenient to you, or it's more convenient to you not to get involved. And so so Parker's is massively empathic. But there is I couldn't write a novel that had no hope in it. For all the darkness, and the Parker books are dark. What they suggest is that if somebody, because he simply is not able to tolerate the suffering of others, makes a stand, then the world can be improved however slightly, but it will be improved at a cost to yourself. You know, it's not free, but Parker is prepared to pay that cost. It's not good. Well, next question. Does anybody else want to ask anything? You're just thinking, God, he's delighted us long enough now.
Guys, I think let's take a moment and then we can all just refresh drinks and food will be served and stuff, and then John's going to sign some books.
Sure. And
A little bit later.
Feel free to ask anything then if you want to as well. Oh, sorry.
Lucky draw you.
Great.
First one, please.
Sibongile Zulu. Have I got that name right? Have I pronounced it right? Oh, thank God. Fantastic. Hello. You won a prize. Look at you.
Do you want to come on up?
You looked to me like you thought you were in trouble for something, you know?
Hold on, stand. Yeah, we want a photo and we need you. Just don't go away.
Don't go anywhere. Stay there.
Okay. One more.
One more. Kerry Askew. Hello. There you go. Free stuff. Best kind of stuff. I know, I'm sorry. One more.
Last one.
Lucy Jansen. No, sorry, I was looking for Lucy. Ah, there she is. You're in charge here. I didn't vote for you. Oh, do you okay?
As much as I
Don't go anywhere, Lucy. Stay here. Fantastic. Thanks for this. Sorry for this too much. There will be a test. Oh dear Lord. All right. I'm in trouble.